Art-centric podcast with Rafi and Klee.
Hola, you amazing artist. It's Rafi.
And Klee.
And today we are what are we talking about, Klee?
We're talking about contests and shows and other various things you might do and how to pick them.
Yeah, we're this actually comes from a question from one of our awesome rogues, which, by the way, if you're listening to this at home, our amazing rogues are here with us. So if you hear us reading comments, that is their brilliance being read through our lips.
Indeed.
I don't know, that sounded a little bit weird.
They know what you mean.
Their brilliance read through. Either way, we're going to be talking about contests, like what it is that we look at when we're choosing either doing like an art contest, like an online contest, or a gallery show, or signing up for a gallery, or doing a contest locally, or signing up for a festival,
or even considering a residency or other kinds of involvements.
Yeah, basically anything that has to do with putting your art out there, which is all that stuff. Competitions, shows, festivals, art walks, all that stuff. And, you know, in our time of doing this, we have done many
things.
And each one of them was kind of like, I want to say whenever you're putting yourself out there and you're like doing something that you haven't done before, it could strike a bit of fear in you. I remember doing my first competition. Like, actually, I'll tell you guys a story. Originally, I was like of the mindset that I don't need to do any art competitions. It's all rigged and blah, blah, blah. And the truth is, I still feel like you don't really need to do art competitions. But as far as like your resume and stuff, any show that you do, any art competition that you enter, any of that stuff, like you're able to add it to it.
You get experience points.
Yeah, you get experience points and you get to add boasting rights. Like, I love the fact that, you know, in years ago, I've won awards at several of these contests, and a lot of times when you do a group show, they, you know, award best of show and that kind of stuff, which is why I always recommend, like, if there are any kind of like co-op, maybe not co-op galleries, but like, what are they called? They're 501c3 galleries where they'll do group shows, like local community galleries and things like that. I would definitely, if they're having some kind of call for artists, I would definitely sign up. And, you know, when you win, I've won Best of Show at Artel Gallery. I've won Best of Show at Luna Fine Art Gallery. I've won no, I didn't win at 1060 Gallery.
It happens.
Yeah, so
you got in.
I did get in. I got into the show. So, and that's the thing, like, you get into the group show, then that's another notch that you get to put on your resume. Does a resume matter? Not really. Like, not really, but it does. You know what I mean? The way that I think of, like, artist resumes, like all the things that I've done, is like, or even like the artist bio where you're putting in the list of shows that you've done and your accolades and all that stuff. What that does is it gives you brownie points for someone else who finds that important. And the reason they find it important is because, honestly, right now in society, that's important. You know, like you go to get a job or you go to sign up for anything and they want to look at accolades.
It's social proof.
Social proof.
A lot like testimonials are social proof.
Yeah.
Sarah says her criteria are cost to enter and can I get there.
That's good.
Those are good, valid criteria.
Those are very good, valid. Hey, Squirrely Gardner and Kim, how are you?
Esther says, I feel like I need the validation and the motivation of entering shows since things aren't selling very well right now. And besides, it would be nice to be recognized.
Yeah, social proof. And it's tricky waters, though. It's tricky waters because you want to make sure that you're not reliant on that social proof to be able to call yourself successful, you know, and when it comes to that kind of stuff, like with all the awards that I've won, I can honestly say that none of it really, you know, it's not like the sales started flooding in right after I won awards.
It didn't change anything really.
No.
It's nice for sure.
Yeah.
It's nice to be recognized, but as far as business is concerned, it was pretty much business as usual.
It's nice to be recognized, and honestly, it's, kudos. Like, I feel good when I look at my list of, because I'm like, okay, that to me is showing, like, dude, I've been doing this. I've been doing this art thing, and I'm not just saying that I'm doing it. Like, look, these are the art shows that I've done, some of them, because we've done so many that our list would be humongous. So a lot of it is left out of it. So I take the most prestigious ones that I've done and I've put them on my list so that when people see it, they see, okay, these were the things that I was most excited about doing in 2019. These were the things that I was most excited about doing in 2018, and so then the list just kind of builds every year. I also do it that way so I could update it easily without having to,
filter through a lot of things.
When you're doing this, there's the possibility of doing so many things that that could, updating it could just become a pain in the butt.
So we're going to cover a lot of territory, but to kick this off, I want to read the 2 questions that prompted this topic.
Before you read that, I want to read Rachel's. She said, "Hello, I'm debating entering shows this year." Well, that's perfect, Rachel, because that's what we're talking about. What kind of criteria we look at. And yeah,
Absolutely.
Go for it.
Okay, so question number 1 goes like this. My goal this year with 2D art ideas is to win some awards of 3rd place or higher. Because there's so many online shows now, it's easy to enter a lot of them. But how do I decide which shows? It's probably not financially wise to enter all of them. You are correct. Yeah. I'm predominantly a soft pastel artist, but this information might be helpful for anyone. So this is our main question that we're covering. Our secondary question is, I too wonder about these art contests I see online. I always try to research to make sure they're real. How do you feel about sending art to galleries and then they send them back after the contest? Also, I asked this a while ago, but I don't remember your answer. I had paintings printed and they came out very blurry.
Any ideas
what to use them for? So that's another secondary question.
That question is from Lori. Thank you, Lori. Thank you, Esther, for the questions.
Yeah. So I think the main thing here is how do you vet the shows and choose which ones you're going to go for? Obviously, cost to enter is going to be a factor. Reputation is going to be a factor.
Yeah. So there were different periods of what the criteria was for shows, and that kind of evolves as you go through your career and the more things that you do. In the very beginning, I want to say that our criteria was, is it under $100? I think in the very beginning it was like, is it under $50? Mm-hmm. Is it at least 30 minutes to an hour away?
Or virtual.
And is it something that is, that I'm able to display what I want to display, right? So there were some big name shows that didn't fit into that criteria because they charged like $300 or $400 for booth fee. A lot of what we looked for was stuff that local artists were recommending to us.
A ton of what we did was through word of mouth recommendation.
Yeah, and then online events or online shows, contests in particular, whether they were magazine contests or online contests, those were things that also via word of mouth I kind of looked at, right?
Yeah, you kind of look at do they have a social media presence, the organizers, the show itself, the contest.
You do want to read that fine print because unfortunately when it comes to art and artists and stuff like that that's out there, there's a lot of underhanded bullshit going on when it comes to that. So there are some galleries out there that are definitely predatory galleries. There are some contests out there that are predatory contests. You know, these are designed to make a quick buck off of the person trying to get exposure. So you want to make sure that it is a trusted source, right?
Yeah, and here's two ways you can go about that, right? So last year I was thinking about entering a piece of music into a music contest, online-based contest. So the first thing I did was, in this particular platform, they had comments from previous entries and people who were familiar with it. And there was mixed reviews, as you're always going to find. Some people saying this is a total scam because of XYZ. Some people saying it was a good experience. So you kind of have to weigh out the averages there. But one of the tricks that Rafi and I have always kind of employed, whether it was a virtual thing or an in-person thing, was to shoot the organizers a question. Whether it was like we really need to know this kind of question or an arbitrary question just to gauge what their vibe was.
Basically, we vetted them.
So basically how that worked, and usually our question was pretty easy because it was like, hey, we're two artists that are married with different mediums. Is that cool? Kind of thing. And how does that work? And then we were really looking for their tone in their response. Were they snotty? Were they arrogant? Were they cool? You know, how long did it take to reply?
Were they like, you know, and you always get that vibe where somebody like replies and they're kind of frustrated because they're not there to help you.
Right.
You know, and which is always interesting to me. It's like, okay, well, what's the motivation behind this competition or this contest, right? A lot of times, unfortunately, the motivation is making money. So, we're going to get so many artists, and if we promote it, everybody's going to give us, you know, $100 to whatever. And then there are contests out there that's like, I've applied to contests that were like $10 submissions from Artist Magazine or something like that,
or an organization,
or an organization. Like that's what, you know, like if it's an art organization that you are familiar with, that's not all they do. Because that's one thing to look out for. If there is an art magazine or some kind of art competition online, and that's all they do, right? Then that means that's how they make their money. They're not doing anything else to support the artist community or do anything.
And there are a lot of them out there.
And that's where that becomes very suspicious to me. Very suspicious. So that's part of the criteria. Like, is it real? Is it suspicious? You know, the other side of it for competitions in particular is like, how much is this costing me? Right?
Yeah.
Because if they're gouging your eyes out in order to, which I don't think that's the phrase. I think gouging you for your eyes out.
That's a very visceral depiction.
Gouging you for money to enter their virtual competition, right? And I get it because sometimes, you know, they got to pay their judges or whatever like that. But like a lot of times those prices, I'm like, no, this should not be more than 10 or $20.
It depends on the show. One of the most prestigious awards you can win in the jewelry category is the Sol Bell Award, and it's quite cost prohibitive to enter.
Yeah.
But it's a big competition.
Yeah.
That's been going on for many, many years.
That's the one that has that history. And if you see, you know, big jewelry designers listing it as their accolades, you know, there's a difference. You have to like take a look and see like, does this have a reputation that is known throughout the art world?
But I do highly recommend emailing any organizers just to gauge what their vibe is towards you. Especially, we especially do this with residencies. And we have found that like the residencies that we've considered doing, the organizers are really cool people and really willing to engage in conversation with you because they know A, that's good for them to engage with artists, and B, that's a big commitment.
Yeah.
To do something like that for an artist. So Really, a lot of it, I know this isn't like brass tacks, but a lot of it is your gut feeling when dealing with organizers.
It really is. And to be honest with you, a lot of everything that we do as artists, whether we're dealing with a potential commission or entering a show or working with a gallery or putting our artwork up in a local business, all of it really comes down to your gut feeling.
And some of that's hard-earned knowledge because we have gotten ourselves involved, especially early on in our career, with galleries and show organizers that we didn't have a good feeling about, and learned the hard way after the fact.
I could tell you right now exactly why I've made some mistakes like that in the past. And here it is. Desperation sneaks in as, oh, this is a great opportunity. I'd be dumb to not take this opportunity, right? Because you're thinking, if I do this, I'm going to make a lot of money. That's how a lot of people get scammed. First off, if I do this, then people are going to notice me. That's how people get scammed. If I do this, I'm going to get this big commission, right? So like, you really, really have to listen to your gut when it comes to everything and get out of your head, especially if you think that one thing is going to fix all your problems. That's where a lot of these predatory galleries, predatory contests, predatory whatever it is, that's what they're banking on. So really, it's kind of looking at an opportunity and saying, does this opportunity work for me? Do I want to pay the fee that's involved in getting in there? How much work is it going to be? Mm-hmm. Is there extra hoops that I have to jump through? Do I want to jump through those hoops?
And also, one of the most important things with online competitions I've discovered is, and sometimes you have to dig into the fine print, how are the winners actually selected?
Yep.
Is it through online voting of your peers? Is it a selected jury? Is a winner randomly selected? I've seen competitions where it makes it look like your work's being put before a jury, and then it turns out that no, they're just drawing your name out of a hat. And I've seen some recently where it was voting by your peers, but you could buy votes, which is automatically a red flag. And
you gotta look at the fine print, because they have to protect themselves legally by putting it in the fine print. Mm-hmm. If it's not in the fine print, they're going to get in a lot of trouble.
Ultimately, if you're going to enter a competition, you want to know either A, your artwork is going to go before a selected jury who's going to determine a winner, or it's peer voting, right, where your family, fans, and friends can vote for you, but where you cannot purchase votes, because automatically I'm like, that's BS.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? For an organizer to do that's an immediate red flag that they're trying to make money off of this.
One of the other competitions that you could enter, let's see, the kind of things that I've entered that I have awards for is, a lot of times the local area will have the best of.
Local best of, I was going to mention that
local
too.
best of in like one of the newspapers or something like that. I am best of the coast artist of 2000 something.
I was runner up for best of one year, so that's fun.
Yeah, so we got those awards a few years in a row.
And I'd like to mention that was free to enter.
Yep.
And oftentimes, if your area has a best of, it often is free to enter, and just throw your name in the hat, because you never know.
Yeah.
And then ask your peeps to generate some votes for you online. Ask them to support you.
I would also take a look and see if there's any nonprofit galleries in either your area or in the surrounding area where you can show your work in a physical show. Mm-hmm. I will tell you that usually has a lot more of a bang, because you're going to the opening of this group show, you're meeting people in the area that were interested in going to the opening. So, and you have the possibility of walking away with an award. And a lot of times, especially, like Artel, I think it was like $25 if you were not a member, and then $20 if you were a member to enter the show.
These are the galleries that'll do open call to artists
Yep.
for a particular themed show, either monthly or quarterly or however they do it.
And the way I would look at that is to just kind of like look at a surrounding town, type in the name in search, and open call to artists.
And I would also recommend attending one of these openings as a patron just to get the vibe.
To get
right?
the vibe, yeah.
I definitely did. We both did. Before we entered artwork, we went to one of the openings to see what it was like, and if we liked the vibe, then we would enter. Gwendolyn said, I've entered paintings and jewelry in the state and county fairs. They were not expensive, and I won several ribbons, including a best of show for a piece of my jewelry.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
And that's the thing, Gwendolyn. At that point, you are an award-winning artist.
Yep.
You could put that moniker? Is that what it's called? You could put that title on yourself.
And most places have a county fair. Or
I
a
could
state
tell
fair.
you right now that was part, and it's in my book. Like, the more, at first I was like, I wanted to be able to present myself in a way that was, impactful. And so, like, I added all these things. Eventually, it just got too long. So right now, when I am, like, boasting about myself, I'm an award-winning artist.
So Esther says all the contests that she's considering are sponsored by official pastel societies, which I read that and I think, okay, so they're automatically vetted, right?
Yeah.
So your show is vetted. So then cost, and what do you get? What do you get if you win, right? So if you have to pick and choose, go for the best outcome, right? Is there prize money? Is there a feature in a publication? Is there a little badge you can put on your website? Those kinds of things. Go for the best, And also, it can be a little disheartening to enter competitions that are hugely popular, where you're going to be competing with maybe thousands of other artists. So you might want to look for some that are a little less crowded, as far as entries are concerned.
The other thing to look at is who the judge is, right? So, like, because I've judged some juried shows, and like I've judged some competitions, but also whenever I've entered anything, I've also taken a look at the profile of who the judge is, and then taken a look, especially if they're an artist judge, taking a look at their work, what kind of work they create, what kind of work it seems that they like. And, and that's doing a lot of like research before entering a show. But if a show is going to cost me some money to enter, I may want to look at that and see, like, all right, does this person have an aesthetic that would cause them to like the stuff that I create?
Right. And is their taste diverse, or is their taste really, like, for example, if you had very contemporary works and the judge was mostly very traditional work based, you may want to pass on that.
Yep. I can tell you that there are some competitions, especially in the beginning, where I entered some artwork and didn't think about that, and then looked at didn't get into the show or didn't win or anything, and then looked at what those judges, especially if they've done, what kind of things they typically let into the show, and realized that, like, a lot of it was very like traditional portraits and traditional landscape paintings. And of course, now looking at that, I wouldn't even bother entering that show because I don't have anything that fits into that. So,
or vice versa, right? If the taste is very contemporary and you're of the more traditional aesthetic, then that's very, very important. And I think that's a given, but it's not to be overlooked. And definitely, if they are willing to tell you about the people who will be judging your work, which most reputable competitions will, unless it's People's Choice, that is absolutely something to look at.
Yeah.
Esther said less crowded is good.
Yes,
Kim
less
said,
crowded is good.
I have judged both state and county fairs, and that helps your reputation as well. Most definitely, if you're asked to judge a show, not only is that a cool experience, but you can definitely put that on your resume.
Oh yeah, yeah. I've got the shows that I've judged on my resume, because that's almost like a step above winning. It's like now you're being asked to judge shows, and you're like, I've judged shows before. Which, by the way, it's not easy, because especially for me, like one of the shows that I judged was a college show, and I literally fell in love with every work of art. But there was limited space, so some of them could not make it into the show. But I also, told them that there were certain pieces that I was like, do you have an honorable mention? Do you have,
They were like, no, do we need to?
I was like, yes, you need to, I want this piece, and this piece to get honorable mentions. And I want, this is the first place piece, and this is, so like, you think about it, and like the people that are judging the show, they're just people. So they're going to have aesthetics, they're going to have likes, they're going to have dislikes. And, that's part, if you're able to kind of research that before you enter a show, that's a smart move, especially if the show is going to cost you some money. Mm-hmm. Clover's here. Hi, Clover.
Hey, Clover. It's not a bad idea to start with things like county fairs, local shows that give out awards. Usually somebody on the committee or local reputable artists will be the judges at shows like that. It's a nice way to get a ribbon. And Rafi's participated in many, many open call gallery shows locally.
Oh, yeah.
And awards can range from a ribbon to like a really nice little mantle plaque. and sometimes there's prize money. And oftentimes with local gallery open calls too, it's been our experience that part of the prize, if you do win a prize, is that you get your own solo exhibition, which is excellent for the resume.
I've had, I want to say at Artel, I had maybe about 4 solo exhibitions because I won Best of Show.
And also at Luna, you ended up with a solo exhibition because you won an award.
Which was great.
Connie said,
a great show.
The show I just entered had 90 submissions. That's a pretty good number.
Yeah.
That's a pretty good number. It's not overcrowded. It's not, it's got enough submissions.
I mean, it depends on the space. If it's a tiny little space, then 90 submissions is quite a bit.
Sure.
If it's a big old space, then 90 submissions is not
much. It does depend on how big it is. So our secondary question is like, how do you feel about having to send your art to a show to potentially be included and then have them send it back to you? Typically, in my experience, a show will ask for a digital image first, and then if you advance, that's when they ask you for the actual art.
Yeah.
If they're asking for the actual art right off the bat, that's a red flag to me.
There would be a lot of small print that I would be reading if somebody was asking me to submit their art. Now, for local events...
totally fine.
Local events, there was a drop-off and pickup. So, like, you drop off your work, and then if, you get the phone call, if you're going to be in the show or not, and if you got the phone call and they said, no, you're not going to be in the show, then they would have a pickup date for it.
But for the cases where you would need to ship your work... then you want to do a little more digging into that for sure.
Kathleen says, around here, it's 120 to 170 per show. Our local artists are stupid talented. I mean, Kathleen, that's...
Submissions or cost? What are we talking about here?
The submissions, 120 to 170 per show. That's not bad, but it's... we're talking... There's more than just doing like festivals and shows, and that's one of the things that I want to make very clear, because a lot of people, when I tell them put yourself out there and stuff, they look at the more popular like shows and festivals that are going on, and those are usually going to be about $120 to $170.
She's talking about submissions, number of submissions.
Oh, number of submissions.
Yeah. Okay. I wanted to clarify because I wasn't sure there. If you live in an area where there's a lot of really badass creative people, it can get tricky for sure, especially if you're in a small area that's highly creative
I would say,
or a big city.
I would say though, because it wasn't always the case, like, because Pensacola had a lot of artists, and some of the shows, you know, because they would have their, I always thought it was fun. Like, some of the shows were kind of designed for pastel artists at Artel, and then some of the other shows were more for like the weird artists, right?
3D artists. And
so when I would go in, like, some of the shows had a hell of a ton of submissions, and then some of the shows didn't. So I think really it all depends on the show. I love when galleries or places do themed type stuff.
I do too.
And so for Esther in particular, she's talking about pastels. So like, you have the opportunity to enter only pastel kind of shows, you know, especially if you find them online. And you also have the opportunity to enter just, you know, art shows that have their own kind of theme that you could enter with the pastels.
Kathleen said, I still place, but I know to be grateful. That's a good attitude.
Yeah. On the other side of that, my getting mixed up, $120 to $170 per show. Anywhere between $100 to $200 to $300. That's where like local, like large shows, that's the median range, right?
Totally.
Then when you start getting to like the $400, $600 shows, those are the ones that I'm always looking at the fine print, and I'm honestly quite skeptical of, because there's no reason for them to charge that much money. For the most part, a lot of the shows that we did was in the range of $25 to $50 to $100, because, you know, that's where you find art walks, small gatherings that are being put together by a business, things like that. Small towns that are near you that they're deciding to do an every Friday art walk because they're trying to improve their downtown or get more people to visit. So those are the kind of things that you want to look for. And unfortunately, until you get out there and start doing shows or going to those kind of events, like look for an art walk that's maybe a few miles away from where you live, and visit the art walk and see what it's all about. And even if there were a lot of art walks that we did that literally there were only like 6 people there, 6 artists selling, and we were one of them, and we would go every month.
Yep.
And then as that became more popular because the town was pushing it, more customers and more people like that would show up. And that's the thing. It's like, you're doing these shows and you're doing these competitions and you're doing these things, not really for the income, but to put yourself out there. It's a marketing type of thing. So if you're doing a show or you're entering a competition and it's going to cost you a lot of money, well, then you better get something big from that, like a spread in a magazine that you could also add to your resume.
Yeah.
Or
if there's a prize, it better justify that big cost.
Yeah, and even a spread in a magazine to me is not enough to, you know.
No, because there's other ways to get a feature in a magazine.
Yeah, there's definitely other ways. We've been interviewed in magazines and newspapers and stuff like that, and it was never due to a competition.
Yeah, we have never paid for a magazine feature.
No.
Because there's just plenty of ways to do that. Sarah said, I can do $50 fees only. You know, that's fine.
And that's fine.
There's plenty of opportunities at that fee level.
Yeah, you just got to find them. You just got to find them. And I know that every time I talk about this, people will respond. It's like, there are no shows in my area. I'm like, you got to look for them. I guarantee you that there are, especially if there's artists. There's going to be big, expensive shows, and those usually get a lot of publicity. But the small ones are the ones that you want to play around with, and especially if you're just getting your feet wet.
Esther says, the ones I'm looking at for now are 3 entries for $35 to $50. That's fair.
Yeah.
And I would also suggest, look at past winners, right? They'll usually show you the previous winners. If you start to see a pattern emerging of past winners, then you might find that, oh, they're really niched into this particular style. But if you see diversity in past winners, then you know, okay, they're looking at a broader spectrum of work. That's one thing that I look for. If all the past winners look the same and my stuff doesn't look like that at all, then I know that there's a pretty slim chance of me taking home any prize from something.
Yeah.
If they consider a diverse range of works, even in a given medium, right, of subject matter, of style, I like to see that personally. So that's something to look at. There's competitions that are cost prohibitive, and I know I'm not going to take first place in them because I know where my skill set is, right? I'm not going to enter that. Unless for some reason I just want to be able to say that I entered it. So those are things to look at as well. What's the skill level we're looking at? Do I fit into that? What's the past winners' work look like?
Yeah, especially if it's the same judge, like if you have the same kind of judges
Every year,
looking at the past work really helps you. One of the free competitions that happens not every year, Yamana Gold, I usually share it with the Rogues whenever they do the open submission for that. That's a free competition to enter, and it's a gold company in Canada, and they are basically buying the winner's art and adding it to their gallery. So those are all those kind of things. Like if you win first place in that, that's an award-winning thing. And on top of that, you can make some money. Now that's a competition that I know is legit because I've read the fine print. And I also know that, they charge $0 for submissions.
Mm-hmm. And the diversity of work as far as their past winners is on point.
Yeah. Yeah. So you want to look at all of those kind of opportunities, and and one of the things that I want to do is we have a resources page that we want to add whenever there's something like that in a local area or something that is a competition that is legit. We want to add more information out there because I know how sketchy it is when you're looking online and you're trying to find something, like what do? You enter like artist open call for online competitions, and then obviously those pages are going to be dominated with a bunch of bullshit. If you find something and you think it looks interesting, make sure you read the fine print. That's beyond anything else. Make sure you read the fine print because you want to make sure that you're not wasting your time. A lot of people will think that it's a waste of time to do art competitions. Really, that's up to you and how it is that you want to set up your accolades. If you want to have more winnings under your belts and stuff like that. A good friend of mine, because early on, like I was saying earlier in the podcast, I was like, no, I'm not going to do art competition. That's a waste of time. It's bullshit. It's all rigged and all this stuff. And really, I was sitting there talking to a friend of mine that was a portrait artist, and he was featured in a magazine, and he was, he had all these like winnings. He had all these awards and stuff.
A lot of awards.
Yeah. And I was like, what the hell? How do you have so many awards? And he was like, yeah, whenever there's an art competition, I just enter it. Either I enter it, all of them. It doesn't matter. Like, especially if the cost is low, some of these art competitions are like $5 to $10. And he's like, it doesn't cost, it cost me $5 to submit some artwork. And if I get recognized or it works, then I get to add it to my resume.
For him, it was like a percentages game almost. Yep. He was like, I'm going to lose the majority of competitions I enter, but I'm going to win some.
Yeah. So at the end of the year, like you would have, several more awards. And I was like, I hate you. And then I'd asked him about it, and I was like, yeah, I don't know. It's a waste of time. It's like, if you've got nothing to lose, he's like, don't enter those competitions that are going to cost you an arm and a leg. Mm-hmm. He's like, but there's plenty of them out there that are legit that, that you could enter, and maybe it'll cost you $5 or $10, but, it's a chance to win. The only reason you're not entering is because you think you're not going to win. Yeah. And then I realized, like, yep, that's pretty much it.
Yeah. Especially if it's more expensive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. Like, when I was looking at it back then, I was thinking of entering for the prize money.
Yeah.
right? Like, all right, so I'm making this initial investment, and then if I win, I get this. So I was looking at it like that. I wasn't looking at it as experience under my belt, and being able to enter something and experience that and really, it's the reason that I'm able to talk about it now is because I've done it and I've trialed and errored my way through it, like figured out what was important before I started winning. I want to say that like for like 3 years, everything I entered, like either I did not get into the juried show or, I most definitely didn't win any awards.
There will always be rejection.
Yeah.
And no awards given.
And that's the
when
thing.
You're trying.
Dealing with that was so important. And the reason I wasn't entering anything was because I was too afraid of getting rejected. And at the end of it, like realizing like, oh, yeah. The only way that you could face dealing with rejection and not getting an award or not getting into a show is by entering it. You just got to make sure that financially that initial price tag makes sense to you
and
for the experience.
Maybe a good idea is to set yourself an annual budget. This is how much I'm willing to spend annually on contests or juried stuff. And then consider any opportunity against your annual budget, right? So if a contest is going to max out your annual budget in one go, then you're going to really want to scrutinize that contest.
Yeah, you're going to want
And
you
so on.
might not be there yet. It might not be time to do it, or it might be, but at least you got to take a closer look than just all willy-nilly doing
Most definitely. And Esther said another thing she's considering is not just entering contests for her medium, but to enter multiple genres.
Do it.
That fit with what she does.
Yep.
Absolutely. That's something huge for me as a jewelry artist is not just to niche myself into jewelry shows, but to enter shows that accept jewelry but are not strictly that.
Yeah, you have entered jewelry as artwork at some of the art shows.
And sometimes that goes over like a lead balloon, and other times they're like, yes.
It all depends. It all depends on who's running it and who's judging the show. Charity said, I'm alone. How hard is it to do outdoor shows without someone's help? It depends, Charity. Some of the art walks that we did, it was just a table and a chair and some easels. Some of the shows we've done were canopy with reinforcement bars and things like that. So really it depends. If you're just setting up a small setup, you could do it yourself. A lot of the artists that we would do these shows with, some of them would set up small setups because they were doing it themselves. And then some of them did these big elaborate setups and they were doing it themselves. And it really all depends on you and what, how you set yourself up to do a show.
It can be done. Absolutely. I highly recommend bringing someone with you, recruiting a friend, if you can, because it does make it easier, but it can be done. I want to correct what I read that Esther had said. A good idea to look for shows outside my medium, but within my genre or theme, just to specify what that was about. Because I read that a little backwards.
Kathleen said, we have 6 to 7 art walks a year, but grab the tickets now. They sell out overnight. Yeah. We once we got into a lot of the art walks that we got into in the beginning, like they were just getting started out, so like nobody, and then artists would go look at it and they would notice that there were only like 4 or 5 artists set up, and
again, social proof, right?
Yeah, so they were like, "Oh, we're not gonna. That's a dumb show. I'm not gonna do that show." We were doing it every week, so then a year goes by, and all of a sudden, like this show is like popular, like the area is booming. And now everybody wants to get in. But because we were one of the originals, like we had an in. We basically had an in and we had our spot. And
a lot of shows and markets do work that way, man. If you were loyal to them when no one cared, they will be loyal to you when everyone cares. Yep. And sometimes it's not like that, but you'll often find, because you are dealing with people, that if you were good to them, they'll be good to you.
Yeah. And that's the thing you have to remember when it comes to all these shows. When we started doing the market, like we became good friends with, you know, with the market managers and stuff like that, because, and we had been there since the beginning. So, it's important to maintain that relationship. And if you can't maintain the relationship, then you should probably not be doing the show.
Yeah, and let the spot open up for somebody else.
Yeah.
And this is especially important if you're in a small area that has the potential to blow up as far as the art scene is concerned. And that is happening
Yep.
in a lot of places.
Connie said, I went to a ceramic show in San Angelo, Texas, 906 video entries, only 126 selected. Yeah, some of the shows are like that. The more popular the show is, the more, you know, and that's the thing. It's like, if you're going to look at those numbers, you're going to discourage yourself from entering, right? Because immediately you're looking at those numbers and you're doing this initial comparison in your brain that your work surely is not as good as
We all assume that,
so
right?
it's really hard when you're looking at those numbers. You know, obviously it's better to find something where you're not dealing with as much competition, right? But the other thing of this is, sure, 906 video entries and only 126 selected, but what if you're one of them?
Right.
You know, and so you'll never be one of them unless you enter the show that you want to enter.
I would say, like, I always assume I'm going to get rejected.
Yeah, me too.
But largely I enter stuff anyway.
Yeah, and that's a good way. It's like assume the worst, right, and prepare for it. And also be prepared for winning. You know, like, all right, so if I do win, what do I have to do next? Okay, if I lose, how am I going to feel about this? Or if I don't get in, how am I going to feel about this? And then, boom, leave it there, you know? And then if you don't make it in, you already know how you're going to feel about it. You know what? Big fucking deal. I don't care.
Yeah.
And if you do get in, then at least you know what the next steps are to do whatever it is that you need to do.
Yeah, make sure that the next steps are not overwhelming and above what you're willing to commit to. For example, if the secondary step in a competition is having to ship your art across state lines, then really consider how you're going to feel about that.
How are you going to feel about that? Who is paying for it?
Who is paying for it?
That's a big one.
What's the insurance policy with the work?
Yeah.
All that good stuff. Don't enter something you're not willing to commit to. If you have to fly somewhere and be present somewhere if you win, consider that as well.
Yeah, there's a competition that I think happens every 3 years that I have entered, I want to say twice in this time that I've been doing what I'm doing. And it happens in Japan. It's a big competition in Japan. The entry fee is not that much. So like I enter it every year. It wasn't until the last time that I did not make it into the show that I actually, you know, did the research on the judges and all that stuff and realized that for the most part, it's a lot of traditional style art. Very little like weird contemporary stuff. So I was absolutely entering the wrong stuff. So I had to look at the first prize and the second prize and the third prize for that show. And the first prize, the prizes, part of it is plane tickets to Japan and lodging, right? So I'm like, okay, this is cool. They pay for the plane tickets. They pay for the lodging. This is a big event in Japan. I would love to go to Japan. However, it's only a plane ticket for me. So I need to figure out what it would cost for Clea to go with me. And if I do win, what are the steps are we going to take? How long are we going to be there? We still have an art business to run and all that stuff. So that's what I mean. Like, you probably won't win, or I probably won't win it. But if I do, I don't want to be caught off guard and be like, oh shit, what do I do now? So that's the way that I kind of look at any kind of competitions that I do. It's like, whatever.
Or like if the prize is something you don't want to win, like there was one music competition that I almost entered, but the prize was like recording and distribution through this specific label. and I don't want label representation. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, that one, and and they had celebrities promoting this competition,
Yeah.
and when we read the fine print, I was like, bullshit.
That's
like,
really cool if that's what you want, but I don't want that,
Yeah.
right? So yeah, definitely read that. Kim said, I have a gallery opening tonight. It was $20 to enter, $60 hanging fee, and they take 25%. Is that pretty normal? That's a hard question to answer because
it can be, Critch, it can be so every gallery is different, and you have to look at the gallery. Like I said, with Artel, it was $20, $25 to enter if you're a non-member.
there was no hanging
There's
fee.
no hanging fee. They don't charge a hanging
I'm
fee.
sticking on the hanging fee.
Yeah, that's 25%. That's
Yeah.
normal. Artel charged, I think it was 15%. It really all depends on the gallery. I understand if it's a big show, charging a hanging fee. However, a $60 hanging fee would only make sense to me if you had, 20 pieces maybe that they had to hang.
On paper, I'm like, okay, the entry fee is to pay their judge. The hanging fee is to pay whoever's hanging the work. And then, of course, the gallery takes the commission. So on paper, it makes sense. $60 hanging fee seems high to me.
Yeah.
It seems a little like gouging.
Yeah.
It does depend on the gallery.
It
and
depends
show
on the
and
gallery.
area.
So, like, if it's a solo show, I have 6 pieces.
So is it $10 per piece hanging fee?
Maybe that's
Because that makes more sense to me.
yeah. Maybe
then-
that's what they're doing.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, it's not terrible.
That's not bad, a $10 hanging
It's not
fee.
bad. That's not predatory. It's just it's weird to me because I've never dealt with hanging fees.
Nor have I.
However, from doing our own shows, I know how much of a pain in the ass.
Dude, yeah, that's a lot of work.
Hanging
Hanging
art-
a show is the worst part of doing a show.
That's why any gallery that I've done that I've been in, they've never charged a hanging fee, but like I always absolutely respect them for hanging my art.
Oftentimes we've pitched in with the hang or taken it over completely because
Yeah.
we want control.
Yeah, that honestly, Critch, and that's the thing. It's like galleries are all different. I've never dealt with a hanging fee, but I know that it's out there. And it really just depends on the system that that particular gallery has in place.
With some galleries, it's like, well, they're going to hang your show for free, but the revenue splits are going to be
Yeah.
higher for
Yeah.
the gallery.
And and that's the thing. Like I would challenge a hanging fee if a gallery
If it's 6 pieces at $60, meaning $10 a piece, I can't balk at that.
Yeah.
I feel like that's fair.
there are some galleries, Critch, that are commercial they're commercial business galleries, and part of the hanging fee is paying for the wall space as well. So there's that kind of setup that some of them have, because Marty used to have that with his people. Is they would pay, basically it's almost like the hanging fee is almost like a wall space rent.
They're kind of entwined, yeah.
Yeah, they're entwined. So yeah, I don't know about normal. Normal is really relative.
Yeah, that's
when
why
you're
it's hard to
dealing- When
answer.
you're dealing with a gallery, if it feels all right, that makes sense. Yeah,
Yeah.
if it feels all right and you don't feel like you're getting, if they're on the up and up, you're going to know that. You're going to feel that. If they're kind of, skeezy and underhanded, then you're going to feel that too. So
Yeah.
I've dealt with some galleries that didn't have a hanging fee and they were skeezy and underhanded. I was like, nope, not hanging
Ultimately,
my work here.
I circle back to like my biggest criteria is whether I like the organizer or the person running it.
Yeah.
And so there's always going to be some kind of email communication. Even if I have to think of some arbitrary question to email with just so I can gauge the response, I'm going to do it, because it comes down to like, do I get a good vibe or do I get a crap vibe from these people.
That is important, you guys, and that's like, if there's anything that you're going to take from this podcast, that's the main thing I would take, is like, just follow your gut on it. Esther says, at our co-op gallery, I pay $50 for a panel every 6 months plus the membership fee, which is $70 a year.
That's pretty reasonable for a co-op. That's actually quite reasonable for a co-op.
That's very reasonable. The unfortunately, the paying setup for some co-op galleries, like, is more along the lines of the pay setup for a vanity gallery. So a vanity gallery will charge you an annual membership fee. They will charge you for the wall space. They will charge a percentage of the artwork that's sold, and they will charge I forget what it is.
There's a fourth.
Yeah.
I know those big three: annual dues, monthly wall rent, and percentage of sale. And they also will have a insurance bundle type thing. Now, predatory galleries, vanity galleries, tend to charge in the thousands for that. Right.
Whereas co-ops
are usually
it's
pretty
a little
reasonable.
bit more reasonable.
I have been in situations where I'm paying all three of those, right? Annual dues, monthly rent, percentage of sale, plus time.
Plus time, yeah.
And
you have to work the gallery for free.
a lot of co-ops operate that way, and it's so they can keep the lights on and the doors open, and I totally get that. That's the co-op structure.
Yeah.
As long as all of that is reasonable, as far as whatever's reasonable for your area and your economic abilities,
And that's one of the structures, because,
Yeah.
I mean, again, the galleries are going to be run however it is that the galleries are run. We have a co-op here in town, and they don't do the fee structure that most co-ops do. So it's it really depends on your relationship with the gallery. That's why whenever we've talked about anything that has to do with gallery, honestly, it falls into the same place with art shows or competitions and stuff like that, is you want to vet whatever it is that you are planning on getting into and making sure that you're comfortable with the agreements that are there, whether it's a competition or whatever. Kim said, I get the feeling that they love me.
Well, that's good.
That's great, Kim.
That's real good. Yeah, so ultimately, that it sucks to hear, like, sometimes, well, you just gotta go with your gut and stuff. But
I know some people want the brass tacks, and I'm like, that is part of the brass tacks, because nothing is the same. No competitions are going to be the same. And competitions that might be great for me may not be great for someone else. And really it comes down to how it is that you feel about entering a competition or a gallery show or a juried show or whatever it is. And there's going to be a lot of factors involved. Finances, space, location, what the outcome might be. All of those things, some of us treasure one thing more than the other. For me, it's always been about publicity, like putting myself out there. Is this part of me putting myself out there? And it's also been about facing fears. So facing my own fears and in the process putting myself out there, it's going to be worth it to me. But then there's a financial aspect to that. Well, can I pay for this and not walk away from it feeling like if I didn't get this, that I got screwed over? So it's like there's a lot of mental work that goes into doing this and understanding that, like, you're gonna bring in your own baggage into whatever it is that you're gonna be doing, and your insecurities, and the stick man's gonna be screaming in your ear about stuff. And that's really ultimately what's most important about entering these things, is like that's the only way that you're really gonna face those insecurities and those doubts. And educating yourself by looking at the fine print and really getting to a place where you start to trust your own decision-making process. And unfortunately, a lot of times the best way to trust our decision-making process is by failing miserably and then
At least a handful of times.
picking yourself up and saying like, okay, you know, I'm not going to do that again, you know, that kind of thing. So yeah, hopefully that was a good answer for you, Esther and Lori. You know, this is just, we're just chatting here about stuff, really in the process of doing it, and just, you know, you just want to look closer, and you really want to follow your gut on what you feel is worth it. A lot of times, I wouldn't say a lot of times, every time I didn't follow my gut, it was no bueno.
Yeah.
No bueno.
Hard-earned knowledge.
So yeah.
Hard-earned wisdom, I should say.
Hard-earned knowledge. Yeah, I actually like hard-earned knowledge.
Yeah.
This was hard-earned knowledge. But yeah, so hopefully that answered your question. And this was a great podcast. I really enjoy talking about this kind of stuff. And like, because really at the end of the day, what you're asking is, how is it that I approach this other thing of putting myself out there? You know, and it's so important to just figure out there are several different ways and different things to approach in order to really face those fears of putting yourself out there. And it's really nice to be able to say, you know what, I've entered competitions and I've won and I've lost, and, you know, I've got some awards and some of them were a complete waste of time. But the only way to figure it out is to do it. And I think that's it. That's a good place to bring the conversation to a close. And a big fat thank you to all our amazing rogues for being here.
Yes.
Doing this podcast with us. You know, obviously, just being able to have that conversation really makes the whole thing much more fluid and dynamic. So thank you so much for being here. And to everybody at home, thank you guys. All for listening or watching this wherever you are. And yeah, I would say that's it. If you like this and you'd like to subscribe, go ahead and subscribe on wherever it is that subscribe button is, so you could follow us during our next one. And want to say goodbye, Clee?
Good day, everyone.
Adios.